Welcome to our fourth installment of CHISME, a virtual call to action. Bienvenidos to anybody joining us for the first time. I'm actually really excited. I've had different friends reach out over the past couple of weeks saying like, hey, can guys come watch? Or like, oh, is it just for Latinx folks? And I love the question. And the answer is this: CHISME is meant to be Latinx centered and queer affirming, but we're welcome to everybody. So if you are down to come and chismear and talk shit, then you're welcome here and you're all right with me. So thanks everybody for joining us this evening. Unfortunately though, this has been a wild Wednesday in terms of headlines and goings on. Just as a reminder, our three main calls to action in CHISME are demanding justice for Vanessa Guillen, getting our gente counted in the 2020 census, and getting our folks registered and out to vote this November. Kind of turning to our first call to action when it comes to the case of Vanessa Guillen, unfortunately, it seems like Fort Hood continues to be a base, not just of military action, but military inaction and military violence towards our own service members. On August 17th, Sergeant Elder Fernandez was reported missing from Fort Hood, and it appears from news reports as well as reports from the family and the family's attorney that his remains were located yesterday. He was located, unfortunately, I believe, hanging in a tree, some 25 or 30 miles outside of Killeen, Texas, where Fort Hood is located. Sergeant Fernandez was only 23 years old, and the big red flag here, other than him being one of a number of service members that we've learned about who've lost their lives at Fort Hood, is some of the other circumstances surrounding his disappearance and death. He actually had reported being the victim of some sort of sexual assault or sexual harassment, and there was an open investigation going on. So much that's been confirmed by the command at Fort Hood. From his family, he apparently had just gotten home from a good 7 days or so in the hospital on August 17th. Not sure yet, or I haven't found anything to kind of tell us what he was doing in the hospital and what that was related to. But we do know that command staff had removed him from his, I guess, direct chain of command or his unit out of concerns for retaliation or hazing. A little bit more about Sergeant Fernandez. He was a chemical, biological, and nuclear specialist. He was born in Cape Verde, which is a string of islands near Senegal, and he came to the United States at 10 years old. He's survived, I believe, by his mother and sister who live in Michigan. So our thoughts are with the Fernandez family tonight as they mourn the loss of their son, but also join in what is becoming this growing almost sorority of grief of families that have lost their children at Fort Hood. Something I wanted to say, though, just to remember, when I say this list of names, we're talking about Vanessa Guillen, we're talking about Private Gregory Weddle Morales, we're talking about Private First Class Brandon Rosecrans, we're talking about Specialist Freddie Dela Cruz, we're talking about Specialist Shelby Jones, who was killed in early March. Some things about Fort Hood, and this is really important to realize, I think, because in just a moment we're going to be talking about some calls to shut the base down. That there's 5 suspected homicides currently out of Fort Hood between March and June. That is outpacing the last 4 years combined. Okay. Also, Army data shows that more violent and non-violent crimes occur among soldiers at Fort Hood than at Fort Bragg in North Carolina, which apparently hosts thousands more troops than Fort Hood does. There is a big problem, and it doesn't seem to be getting better. It only seems to be getting worse. So with that being said, I'd like to welcome our first guest here with us tonight with the group Vets for the People is Pam Campos-Palma. Pam served in the U.S. Air Force for over a decade as an operations and anti-terrorism intelligence analyst working in Germany, Kyrgyzstan, Iraq, and Afghanistan. She began her career in the immigrant rights movement, served as a gubernatorial appointee for the state of Oregon, and as a consultant to international NGOs and social impact ventures. She's a 2019 Atlantic Bruck Young Leader, was named Top 40 Under 40 Latinos in Foreign Policy by Huffington Post, and a 2018 Champion of Change by the UN. Y'all, Pam is a badass. Those are just a few of her accomplishments. I'm extremely honored for her to be joining us. maybe if you recognize her, it's because you've caught her on NBC, CNN, the BBC, and NPR, among many others. She's also testified before Congress. So I am extremely honored and humbled to have you join us here on CHISME, Pam. Welcome.
Gracias. Thank you so much. Heavy day, and could not be more thankful to be in this space for it. But yeah, thank you.
So Pam, if you could start off by telling us a little bit about Vets for the People and what some of the calls for action that you guys have released have been in regards or in response to Vanessa Guillen's case.
Yeah, so as was said, I lead a project called Vets for the People. We are building a political home for progressive veterans, military connected voters who are tired of politics as usual, are tired of politicians that leave us behind, that take weapons and defense money all the way from city councils, all the way to Congress, to even the commander in chief, and then throw us in endless wars, allow militarism abroad and at home. And we are intentional in building the leadership of vets of color, women vets, queer and trans vets, the vets that are often left behind. And we do this through the Working Families Party, building political power, and also doing grassroots movement building. And so, of course, you know, through this, we're in a reckoning moment in this country, right? I mean, lots of the things that we are seeing even just today are not new to many of us who come from communities that have long understood the violence, the corruption, the inequity that has destroyed communities in this country and kept us from true thriving. And so the Vanessa Guillen case is personal, and the personal is political, and the political is personal. Mm-hmm. It is personal. I'm the daughter proudly of Honduran and Guatemalan immigrants. I'm the first in my family to enlist, the first to go get a degree, the first, American-born person, the first, right? And as many of us know, that comes with a lot of burdens and a lot of responsibilities. And her story is just the story of so many Latinx and people of color in this country. Vanessa Guillen enlisted in the military to help get her mother citizenship, right? Elder Fernandez is also immigrant connected. And the pattern of the fact that for the people that are turning up missing, dead, abused in the military are predominantly lower junior enlisted people from working class backgrounds, service members of color. This is not an accident. And a fact is that Fort Hood has for years now been ground zero for corruption and impunity. And so around the time that Vanessa Guillen's disappearance predominantly came about on Spanish language media, veterans and survivors of military sexual violence who saw the telltale signs. Many of us have been in that position where we served in the military, saw something that was wrong, and it is against the culture to call it out, to say, there is abuse, there is corruption, etc. And so Vets for the People took on, it felt important for us to flank and be in solidarity with the Guillen family and echo their demands. And shutting down Fort Hood, of course, is one of them.
So what I was going to ask is, when I first heard about the case, I was viewing it through, the lens of my experience as somebody who prosecuted intimate partner violence cases. Mm-hmm. And so I know what the red flags were to me, but I'm curious for you as a veteran, what were those warning signs when you started to hear about her story?
I mean, for me personally, one of the biggest warning signs is when many of us, and veterans and service people are not a monolith, but I can say with certainty, and I know some of us that are military connected on this call, military service is not a regular employment, right? You give an oath, which means that you give up some of your rights. And there is the military is the most hierarchical institution in our nation. And when I heard that Vanessa Guillen told her mother, a working class immigrant Latina woman in America, in this year, 2020, that she was being sexually harassed, I knew it was bad. because I think many of us who go away into military service, one of the top things is you don't want to worry your parents. You don't want to burden them with the heaviness that often comes with military service. So my first instinct was, this has to be really bad, right? And Gloria Guillen, there's been, I think, a language injustice, right? She speaks Spanish, but she has been the most clear that her daughter told her there's also reprisal. There is suicides happening because of the abuse that we endure. She had this relationship with her daughter where her daughter confided in her in a way that I think, when I talk to a lot of folks, is not necessarily usual.
Yeah.
And also the last thing I'll say is, separate from that, it doesn't add up. The military and Department of Defense for decades have investigated themselves, right? It is not an accident that the police and the military continually insist on investigating themselves, are the judge and jury, and then lo and behold, oh, nothing really happened, right? And so the investigation of Vanessa Guillen's case, in fact, was investigated by the Army, and the narrative is the same. It's just junior enlisted, junior officers that don't know any better. And it really obscures the reality that accountability starts at the top. Fort Hood has had the highest record of suicides and sexual assaults, including multiple mass shootings and multiple human trafficking rings since 2013. And so this isn't just, this isn't just the narrative of scapegoating low-ranking people. There is clearly a systemic rape culture and violence culture that is unchecked.
So going back to That's for the People and what you guys are working on, and what I've seen published by you guys is kind of sort of 4 calls to action specifically, including shutting down Fort Hood, calling for a boycott on enlistments, which we actually talked about on our last episode of CHISME, saying that, hey, President of LULAC said, hey, keep your daughters at home. And it's like, no. If we're staying home, everybody's got to stay home, is the way I look at it. So tell us a little bit about, what sort of the thought process is behind those calls to action and how people can support those.
Sure. I mean, I'm really big on accountability. Anybody knows me. What is justice for Vanessa Guillen? What is justice for Elder Fernandez? What is justice for all of these folks and for the rest of us? It should not be lost on us that little to no generals or commanders are ever held accountable. If you really think about when is the last time I heard of a general being fired for abusing his troops, it doesn't happen. So number one, what we have said is fire them. You should not be holding your job if multiple soldiers continue to be dead on your watch, right? Number two, the Latinx community in particular is the highest growing demographic in military enlistments, right? And the military is not entitled to our sons, daughters, and youth, right? The military and politicians are not entitled to offer us crumbs of education and healthcare, which should be for everyone, right? Only to then throw us in endless wars, not protect us, but protect our abusers, complicit commanders. And shutting down Fort Hood, which goes with another call to action, which is, where is Congress? Where is Congress? Where are the elected officials that represent the largest? Fort Hood is also one of the largest and most resourced military bases in the United States, paid for by our tax dollars. And there it is split between two congressional districts. So it is represented by congresspeople who have said little to nothing about Vanessa Guillen, about the abuse that has gone on for years. Why? Because they treat those generals like they're golf buddies, right? Many of them are taking defense money. And there is a blind adulation that if I hold these generals accountable, then I will seem anti-military. And what we as Veterans for the People are saying is, you have a choice. You can choose complicit commanders, or you can choose to protect us, enlisted service members, low-ranking officers, the workers of the military, right? You have a choice, but clearly you have chosen them. And like I said, shut down that base. A base that is rife with criminality and violence is not only a harm to those on it, but it is a harm to those around it.
Yeah.
Killeen, Texas is one of the most unstable places to live, right? And if you think that only soldiers are being harmed, exploited, and struck by criminal violence and not civilians outside the base, perpetrators go off base.
Yeah.
And so this is of urgency, and Gloria Guillen said it clearly. Shut down that base, we will build schools and hospitals and housing in its place. We are in a moment in our country where we must divest from violence, because if it does not serve us, then we must invest in communities.
So I'm thinking, you know, you're talking about this command staff and failing to protect their own. And I'm thinking if you use any sort of other institution as an analogy, this wouldn't happen. I couldn't imagine, and I know we've got teachers on the call with us tonight, I couldn't imagine teachers who, oh yeah, like every year or every semester or 6 weeks, a kid just comes up missing out of that one teacher's classroom, or even the principal of the school, or a dean of a university even. We can go bigger than that, right? They're not keeping their job, and there's a good chance that that institution might get shut down. Schools get threatened with way worse for way less. You know, underperforming on a test. Oh man, we're gonna take money away, and here's some school choice, and we're gonna bust these kids out. But then we take a look at our military, which is another public institution. It's there to protect us. It's there for us, right? To keep us safe. And you just don't see anywhere near that level of accountability at all. So I just so agree with that idea of, it's kind of like a snake, like you got to cut it off at the head at this point, unfortunately. So we mentioned, you know, where is Congress in all this? And we here at CHISME have been saying, you know, supporting the I Am Vanessa Guillen bill. And there's kind of been some I've had an issue with trying to find any, whether it's a draft or an abstract or really what that bill is, but it's not the only legislation out there that is seeking to address this issue of sexual assault in the military. What can you tell us about legislation that you're familiar with, either have, you know, worked with or advocated for, and how we can support that?
Yeah. This is a lot, but it's really important. You know, I'll just share a little bit. When I started organizing, I started in the immigrant rights movement. And what I did was I really was organizing farm workers around farm worker rights, undocumented immigrants, and public safety. And one of the most politicizing things I saw was how the Latinx community is exploited politically. Because we are so disenfranchised, because, you know, even at the time, even when I was in military uniform, active duty, I didn't really understand what voting meant. I didn't really understand, like, who's my congressperson, you know, because I was a first generation, you know, military member, American citizen, et cetera. And I see that happening now. It hurts me to say it, but I see it happening now. The I Am Vanessa Guillen bill, to my knowledge, it hasn't been seen. And the only person that can introduce legislation is a legislator, right? Not a lawyer, not an advocate, not an activist, it's a legislator. And so I see a lot of these calls around hashtag I Am Vanessa Guillen bill. And just to be clear, that bill is only about reporting, which I think is important, right? It's important that there be an independent way for people to report sex crimes outside of their chain of command. But one thing that I fear, and one thing we should all think about, is that also normalizes that sexual crimes are an occupational hazard. Mm-hmm. I hear a lot military sexual trauma. And I myself, I'll be vulnerable and say I have a disability rating for military sexual trauma. I also am a survivor. And also, this is not something that we should expect to happen to us if you put on a military uniform. And so, you know, Representative Jackie Spear has been a longstanding champion of course correcting ending military sexual violence and fixing military justice. What does military justice mean? Because you better believe that if there's no justice for military sex crimes, there's no justice for military hate crimes, right? We know that there are hate crimes, right? I see some of you nodding, hate crimes in the military, structural racism in the military. And so the military justice system, I often say the UCMJ, the Uniform Code of Military Justice, is often rigged against us.
Yeah.
And so Jackie Spear has a bill. She, with a few other, Congresswoman Mickey Sherrill is another one she's working with, that is more comprehensive. There's a more comprehensive bill that is not just about reporting, but actually is talking about a database, right? If there's a person, where is the military database of offenders that if more than one person does a restricted report, which means you don't necessarily you don't publicize, details, then it does get elevated in a different way, and there are different ramifications. Congresswoman Spear is also trying to tackle what consequences look like. What are certain rights that are given to survivors of military sex crimes, and not just how to report and how to have a hotline for it, right? And so the last thing I'll say is the Military Justice Improvement Act has long been the thing that advocates have really called for, which once again says that you cannot, you have to take this out of the hands of commanders. Commanders are not prosecutors. Commanders are not really, right? They're not necessarily equipped to do this work. And so the Military Justice Improvement Act takes this out of their hands. And the last thing I'll say is, in 2010, I filed an Inspector General complaint to my commander about actual racism and misogyny that I was experiencing. And I saw how someone in my chain of command, even low, a lower ranking enlisted person, tried to take it out of the hands of my commander's desk. And so, again, the military there is no unions, right, for military people. There is no like town hall that you can go to get your grievances met with. And so it really is on Congress to say, no more exploitation and abuse of our soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen. And most importantly, will they allow rape culture to be a training tool? Will Islamophobia and racism be a training tool? Because many of us will tell you that from the moment you even sign up in MEPS, I hear countless stories of people that say, yeah, my recruiter sexually harassed me before I even went to boot camp, right? All the way to the VA, there are stories of sexual harassment. And so it's not just the military, it is the entire system that has not decisively created a code and a structural transformation of how to actually hold perpetrators accountable, and how to support and take the burden off survivors and give them the actual resources and support that they need.
And I want to recognize that what you just gave us by letting yourself be vulnerable and sharing your truth and speaking your truth. Unfortunately, it does take that raw work of survivors becoming activists and spreading that word and sharing that personal story, I think, to get the attention of Congress and get everybody on board. And so I know it's not easy to reopen those wounds every single time you jump on a Zoom or in front of a panel, but thank you so much for sharing that with us here at CHISME. I think it's got real value, and I hope that every time you speak those words, they only empower you further. Kind of on that idea of, being vulnerable when you're doing this sort of advocacy work and activist work. You recently caught a little bit of heat. AOC, Rep. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, was it like she retweeted you or shared a clip? And all of a sudden, some folks you didn't come calling for came calling for you. Tell us a little bit about that, what that experience was like.
Yeah. She's wonderful. She's a good friend, and I know cares very deeply about this issue. And it's happened more than once, actually. So I posted about this because I got, I think, just a snippet of what many of the Black and brown women legislators in our Congress must receive on a daily basis. But it is not a surprise to me that building our power is a discomfort for those of us that want to keep the status quo.
Yeah.
And so, when she retweeted me, this isn't the first time that I have gotten hate mail. that I, have gotten direct misogyny in my inbox, that I have gotten people that want to also be exploitative, and my kind of mantra is that if you are not making people uncomfortable, like, that is my measure of success, right? I'm not here to say the sky is blue. I'm here to say rape is bad, hold commanders accountable. I don't want Congress people taking defense money and not doing shit about it, right? My mandate is to the people. My mandate is to those other, like, I can't stop thinking about other low-ranking soldiers on Fort Hood right now who don't know if Congress is going to get their butts on that base and investigate in a real way, right? I'm accountable to them. And so, I think that powerful Latinas, Black and brown women, Indigenous women rising up in this country in a moment where we're calling out the hypocrisies. You can't say you support the troops if you're completely fine with our abuse.
That's what I'm
saying. You can't say that anymore.
Where is and guys, anybody, I'd love for CHISME to become a little bit more interactive. And I know we've got some folks from Vets for the People shouting you out in the comments. Triste Ordex gave you a yes. But we had kind of, you and I mentioned this a little bit of like, where's the stand for the flag crowd now? Where is the support our troops, where is that? America, fuck yeah. How about like, we don't rape our service members, fuck yeah. Like, where is that crowd? I know what my answer is, but I'm curious as to what your take on that is. Where are they
at? Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of people in this country, I call it plastic patriotism. I think that there is a plastic patriotism that is deeply comfortable with military people and veterans as props. If you want to go against Kaepernick and Black Lives Matter, I'm going to put up a vet to tell you how much to use as a cudgel, right? Yeah. If you want to talk about equity, I'm going to use a vet. If you want to talk about immigrants and refugees, I'm going to use a vet, right? And we as vets are fucking tired of it, right? Because we are dimensional people. We are dynamic people. And so it is plastic patriotism. And it also is, I will also tell you this. This is why, I'm very ready to vote a lot of people out of office. Can't tell, but one of the outbursts of Congress not doing their job and holding the Department of Defense accountable is the American public has also fallen into a slumber of blind adulation and reverence for the military, right? And there's also a sense of entitlement by those folks that are like, America, fuck yeah, the military, only when it's convenient, which to me is a betrayal to true patriotism, to true community. And so, frankly, they've had a monopoly on the military. Those types have had a monopoly, they've had sharp elbows, and we're saying no more. You're not allowed, like, we're gonna call this hypocrisy out. You cannot be saying, you can't say all lives matter and then turn your back when kids are in cages and Black folks are being killed in our streets and authoritarian slide is at our door, right? Like, that to me is cowardice. And I think that there's a lot of power in those of us saying, we can no longer, because I love my country and community so much, and it has not lived up to its ideals. And in fact, it has betrayed me in many ways. I feel responsible to guide her in a better way, and I will bring my community with me, right? And I think folks like Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, who I know gets hate mail on the daily, right? Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, folks that have a true vision for all of us and want to, again, divest from violence. The United States has become addicted to war and addicted to guns and addicted to violence in a way that has never really served Black and brown people, queer and trans people, and women. And by building our power and saying, we aren't going to do that anymore, and by the way, we're going to vote you out, we're going to recruit people in our community, right? Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, I think, has shown the most, and she, did an Instagram story on this the other day, that you can laugh all you want that she's a bartender, but being a bartender made her the master legislator that she is, right? My mother works at 3 different hospitals as a nurse's aide, and my mother, as an immigrant in this country, I believe would be a better, legislator than some of the people that I think have said, I'm not going to say anything about Fort Hood.
Yeah. This will be the question to kind of, I could keep you here all night, but I won't. This will be the kind of question I want to close you out on, and then I'll get to our first giveaway. And that's this idea, you mentioned that Latinos are the biggest growing recruitment population. And I'm wondering what you think are some of the reasons behind that, and if you think that that's kind of exploitation in a sense. My hunch is that it's kind of playing on these sort of imposter syndrome insecurities of immigrants, of wanting to prove their love for this country and to, you know, pay it back or pay it forward. And also as this possible like golden ticket of, oh man, I can, just like in Vanessa's case, I can get my mom's citizenship, I can get us all citizenship, or, you know, I'll be more valid, I'll be respected, we won't be looked down on as immigrants because I served. So I was wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot, but I'll boil it down to a few things. Like I said earlier, I'm definitely a school to military pipeline kid. I was one of the smartest kids in my class, and a guidance counselor said, you know, kids like you, a white guidance counselor said, kids like you, AKA brown kids, don't really go to college. You might think about the military. And, you know, bias in our education system, particularly against communities of color, is not new, right? And also not just communities of color, but poor white kids as well, right? Funneled into the military and not into higher education. So I think that there's a pipeline, just like the school to prison pipeline, there's a school to military pipeline that says like, you are supposed to be, you know, in that place. I also think that, like I said earlier, the military offers basic human rights that all of us should have. I am a believer that the GI Bill is something that all Americans should have. The VA system isn't perfect as it is. I can have a telehealth appointment that I want, right? I even have acupuncture under the VA. This is something that all Americans should have. We should not treat our war fighters as exceptional, you know, in basic human rights. And the thing that you mentioned, I think, is the biggest one. One of the hardest conversations I have is young Latinas coming to me saying, I think I want to join the military because I think it'll finally make me American enough. I've done everything I can. I recently, a few years ago, I had a good friend of mine. She had a law degree and an MBA. She was an advocate in her community, and she said, but I think this will like finally make me American enough. Which to me is heartbreaking because, you know, as someone that served this country and feels deeply dedicated to making her better, that's a failure. That's a sickness of this country, that some of us are American and some of us are not, and that you have to take bullets for it in wars that, frankly, politicians can't answer for, to be American enough. And so my bottom line is that, and the last thing is, you know, people like myself, I joined the military to make my mother and my immigrant mother proud of me. And I see that a lot with Latinx people, is they really want to live up to the immigrant sacrifice. And I believe that military recruiters prey on that. Because one thing that I'll say is, they don't say, oh, you're a Latinx person and you want to serve your country. They don't say, go to the military academies, right? They don't say, go to these special military, you know, elite programs.
Yeah, here's your recommendation letter for, you know, West Point.
In my situation, and what I've heard in my field work, is many of us are told, just go open general, which means the military gets to choose what they want for you. And so as of right now, you know, in line with our demands, I cannot in good conscience, you know, as someone that deeply loves my country, and frankly, I'll be honest, I have a vision where we have a defense force that fixes the pipes in Flint, Michigan. We have a defense force that is of the people and by the people, that is building a Green New Deal and protecting us from pandemic. And let's not forget, there's 2 hurricanes right now happening. The National Guard, that's one of their mandates, right, is to help in climate emergencies. But we don't necessarily have a real vision or a mission for the Department of Defense. And until politicians do their job and protect us and stop treating us as expendable, then we should not enlist in a military that does not respect us and treat us as the full humans that we are.
Pam, you talk shit with the best of them. Thank you so, so much. I know that this is both a labor of love and of loyalty for your mission to you. Really quickly, if people want to get involved with the Vets for the People or support you guys, where can they go? Or drop a link in the chat so that folks can show up for y'all.
Yeah, follow us on all the social medias, Vets for the People. You can also go to vetsforthepeople.org to sign up if you are a veteran and want to organize with us. And thank you again.
Thanks so much, Pam. All right, guys, I'm going to do our first giveaway, and it's going to be for these awesome hand-sewn masks from my friend Elizabeth Ectefe at Ectefe Designs. She's based in New York, but she's a Texas girl through and through. I know Elizabeth because we were friends in elementary school. But I'm going to show you a couple of the masks really quickly. There's an awesome RBG print. Who doesn't want that? I'm keeping one for myself. And October isn't that far away. A great Dia de los Muertos. And it wouldn't be Chisme without one of my favorite patron saints, Frida. All right, so off screen, because it's National Dog Day, I've had Bear, my dog, picking our first winner. He's gonna hand it to me now. Just kidding, guys. He's passed out on gabapentin on the couch. Does that say Maria? Mm-hmm. His handwriting's terrible. Maria González, this is yours. So if you want to email me, and I'm going to add the email in the chat right now, send us your address here. Well, not to everybody, unless you want a bunch of new pen pals. I don't know. There could be some creeps in this group. I might be one of them. Who knows? All right. There's my email. If you'll send me your address, we will get these to you. And thanks for joining us for Chisme. All right, guys, my next guest, I believe, is here, and that is Texas Representative Jessica González. Jessica, are you with us?
I am.
Hey, Jessica, welcome. And real quick, I also want to shout out, we've got a rep-elect in the House, Jasmine Crockett out of House District 100 joining us as well. And it looked like a good team of veterans with Vets for the People. So thank you everybody so much to our newcomers. Jessica, good evening. Welcome to Chisme. For those of you who don't know, Jessica represents my hood, my district. She's my representative, and I'm very proud to have her. She's also one of the founding members of the Texas House LGBTQ Caucus. She is a badass in her own right, a local attorney, was formerly a freshman representative, but we're going in for round 2, so that you're not a freshman anymore. And she's working on some legislation that I'm really excited to share with you guys. So Jessica, welcome to Chisme. Tell us a little bit about the LGBTQ caucus, how that got going, and why it's important that we have it.
Okay, well, I will start off by saying that I was happy to see that my Dia won the face mask, and that was clearly not planned, but I thought that was pretty cool. At any rate, the LGBTQ caucus, there are 5 founding members. This is the first time in Texas history that we had 5 openly LGBTQ members in the House. Before that, there had only ever been 2, Mary González and Celia Israel. And so, you know, there was a lot of excitement about that. You know, some of us woke up that day after election and found out, you know, who won, and it was like, wow. I knew that, you know, after I won my primary that I was going to be joining the House. And so, you know, I think that you know, starting a caucus creates a presence in the House. We've had allies in the House for years. You know, our other members that have been working on this issue for a long time, and now we have representation in the House. And I believe that it's going to continue to grow. You know, we're seeing more and more folks that are more and more women, more and more LGBTQ people of color that are running. And you know, this November is definitely a race to be looking at. But, you know, it's 5 women and 3 of us are freshmen. And, you know, we're just trying to do the best that we can to advocate for LGBTQ or pro-equality issues and be ready to, you know, be ready and be on the offense or on the defense when, you know, these prolific filers of these, you know, anti-equality legislation when they file them.
And like kind of a procedural question, when you form a caucus in a legislature, or at least here in Texas, right, does that imbue any sort of special powers, higher voting status, or is it just a way to sort of formally organize around an issue or a topic?
Yeah, the latter. I mean, there's no formality about it. I mean, I think that was the first time for all of us to to start a caucus. And so it was a learning situation for us, but no, I mean, the usually like caucus fees and things like that, I mean, they come out of our campaign money. Those are, when we join different caucuses, those are basically like extracurricular activities. But yeah, I mean, it's more of a just having a presence, in the House. And, there's several different caucuses. I mean, there's, veteran caucus, there's women's healthcare, you name it. And it's just people that come together, people that are, allies on the issue, to help advocate for it.
And tell us a little bit about your district. It's a pretty heavily Latino population, Latino community district. And, our second and third calls to action here at CHISME are getting our gente counted in the census and getting us registered and out to vote in November. So what are some things going on in your district that you're working on to get folks counted and get them registered to vote?
I mean, I think that one of the most important things that we can do, that everybody can do to make sure that everybody gets counted, is just educating people on the importance of the census and what that means for us. We saw that, and at the end of the day, funding was cut, but federal money was cut because they want to suppress, they don't want everybody to get counted. They know that Latinos are the fastest and youngest growing population. They know that we have the potential to have a very strong, voting bloc and to be able to determine elections ultimately. So they don't want us to get counted. And so that's why funding was cut. We see the way that the census is being, I guess the way that they're rolling it out this time is way different than what it was done before. They're doing part of it on a platform that's online. We know that, hey, I was excited when I taught my parents how to text message, right? But if I had to explain to my parents how to go online and fill out the census, it's people already don't fill it out even when they actually get it in the mail, right? And then you're asking people to take yet another step, to go do it. But people need to understand why it's important. So I think that's where we come in, is educating people and letting them know why it's important. I mean, and it all really comes down right to November. I mean, we have a lot at stake this November. We're in a redistricting year, which is what the census, right? That's why it's important for us to have an accurate count. It determines how, the lines for, local elected positions, for statewide, for federal. Texas population is obviously growing, right? And it's the Latino population that's growing within it. We could stand to gain a congressional seat. So that means that we get more representation, and we can have representation that's actually representative of the people that are in that district. If it's a Latino, a minority majority district, there is more of a likelihood that you will have somebody representing somebody who looks like the people that live there. It also is, it's determinative on how money is allocated for education and other services within areas. And so if we're not properly being, people aren't being counted accurately or properly, we're losing out on money, and we're losing out on the potential to have more representation for the people that live, within the state of Texas.
Yeah, I also think too, in addition to getting properly represented, being properly and adequately funded, or funded in a way that's equitable, there's also, I think, this, and we don't talk about this as much, this historic part of it. If we're not getting counted, if 60% of us are missing from the count, well, when we're looking 20, 30, 40 years down the line, when we're the footnote or hopefully a whole chapter in the textbook, it's really easy to skew what history was and what was actually going on when we're not showing up or we're not being counted properly. So thanks for your efforts on that. And just as a reminder to everybody, the deadline to register to vote is October 3rd here in Texas, and you've got to complete the census by now September 30th. And that's what Jess was talking about. They moved that deadline up. So let's talk, I kind of teased that you're working on some legislation. It's a comprehensive non-discrimination bill. Let's talk about it. What have you been working on? What do we have to look forward to?
So I guess like the fortunate part about being in the pandemic and working from home is I've been able to focus on a piece of legislation that I'm making a priority next session, along with Equality Texas and HRC and other allies, is going to be their top priority. So we've been working together on just doing several rollouts. We've done one in Austin, El Paso, We're going to do it in San Antonio. We're doing them throughout the state, obviously virtually right now. But basically, I mean, this would be the first time that we're actually going on the offense on a piece of legislation like this. You know, I think the last time that a pro-equality bill was passed was in 1993 by Miss T. Her name is Sophronia Thompson. She's the longest serving woman legislator in the House. And it basically, this bill would cover LGBTQ folks as far as like sexual orientation, gender identity, and in areas of public accommodation, housing, and employment. And there is a study that Texas Competes, which is the business coalition of Equality Texas, and they commissioned Dr. Ray Perryman, who is a reputable economist, to do this comprehensive study on what the effect that passing a piece of legislation like this would have on our state, right? And so his report shows that even just by 2025, that I mean, our state would reap benefits from that, and as far as like money, our economy, and it would create tons of jobs. And so, you know, especially I think right now, as you know, we're going through the pandemic, and tons of people have lost their jobs, and we need more jobs. We need money for local government and state government, because I mean, you know, the comptroller has already said that we're going to be in a severe deficit, you know, going back next session. And we were already, you know, struggling to try to take care of funding public education last session. And that was considering that we finally, you know, used money from the rainy day fund. But, you know, I'm excited about it, you know, and this is actually the first time that a bill like this has bipartisan support. So, you know, let's
talk about that. That's a big, I mean, it's a letter in the LGBTQ alphabet soup, but also bipartisan, really important to get both parties on board, especially in Texas when we're, you know, still really Republican controlled. So you mentioned this is the first time going on the offense, meaning getting to score a point for our community versus defending against a transphobic bathroom bill or somebody's obsession with, you know, other people's genitalia. How have you been able to get that bipartisan support, and what's that coalition building look like?
You know, honestly, I mean, a lot of it was, you know, just building those relationships during session. You know, there are lots of issues that Republicans and Democrats agree on. People don't really think about that, but there really are. I mean, there are so many issues, and there are very few issues that we're not aligned with. But those are things that have been politicized throughout the years that don't need to be politicized, right? Women's health care, LGBTQ issues, immigration. I mean, these are human issues. These are not things that should be up for debate by politicians at all. And so I think that, you know, if you approach it that way, then you start changing minds and hearts, right? You can't exclude people from the conversation, that the folks that you want to convince to be on your side, to be a part of your issue, because we have to educate them. But a lot of it was just, you know, working with folks, you know, during session, and you know, at the end of the day, at least, you know, in the House, Democrats aren't a majority. And so you can't really shove legislation because we don't have the numbers to get it passed. So you have to build those coalitions with, you know, and get that Republican support. Otherwise, I mean, your bill is not going to pass. But I mean, it's a big deal. It's a big deal because, you know, we have Representative Sarah Davis. She's from Houston. She's always been, you know, voted with us on pro-equality issues. I mean, she has, you know, staff that is LGBTQ. You know, we have Todd Hunter, who is now, you know, he has, you know, worked with LGBTQ allies and organizations in the past when he served on, for example, the Calendars Committee, you know, to kill some of these, you know, these bad pieces of legislation in the past, like the bathroom bill and things like that. But now, you know, he's open about it, right? He's excited about it, and he wants to. And I think, you know, ultimately, when we have these conversations in the House, you know, when I talk to my colleagues, my Republican colleagues, and this is why it's important to have, you know, a diverse set of folks, you know, that are working in the Capitol, because you add a voice to these issues, right? And so, you know, I got elected the same way they did. We all did. We serve on these committees together, and we ask for each other's support on legislation. And so, why do you feel that I don't deserve, that I should be able to be denied service if I go somewhere? Do you think that's cool? You think that's fair? And just having those frank conversations and putting them on the spot. And at the end of the day, they don't want to vote on this stuff. But we have these prolific filers, right, that want to file this legislation, and a lot of folks feel like their hands are tied because they feel like they're voting their district, which in actuality, I mean, there's actually a study that came out last year that shows an overwhelming number of Texans do not believe in discriminating against folks just because of their gender identity or sexual orientation.
So I think it's really interesting, the Dr. Perriman's study, which is really just taking an economic look at how to treat humans with dignity, and making the business case for just being decent, right? And I'm wondering do you feel like that's a little bit of a trade-off? Or are we just capitalizing on something that's already there? Like we've seen in the past, especially here in Texas, where we've got big corporations, almost sort of pseudo monopolies, come in and kind of save the day when it comes to LGBTQ issues at the legislature. I'm thinking Amazon, I'm thinking other tech companies, IBM, that come in and are like, hey, pump the brakes. We're not going to be cool to do business here if you guys go down this path.
You capitalizing in what? I mean, what do you mean in what regard?
Well, so we already have their support, sort of the business sector, but it tends to be at least traditionally viewed as the business sector kind of being more of the Republicans' friend versus the Dems' friend, if that makes sense. And so by using this kind of like argument of like, oh, but look how much these lives are worth in terms of labor, and that's why you should protect them. Is that kind of a trade-off, or it's like, what does it matter at the end of the day? Let's just get ourselves protected.
I mean, I don't think it's a trade-off. I mean, those numbers from his report come from tourism money. People aren't going to want to do business in states or places that discriminate. I mean, when last session before I served, and it was kind of a shit show in the House, but because we were dealing with SB4 and the bathroom bill, and I mean, my first session was nothing like that at all, but we saw people that were pulling out from conferences in the state of Texas, that were canceling events. We were losing business, and Dallas alone lost a lot of potential tourism money because of that, because people don't want to do business in places that are going to discriminate. And so being inclusive, diversity and inclusion shows that our economy is going to reap from that. And so, I mean, that's what what his study shows. And I think that right now, given the situation with the pandemic, I think it's even more timely.
Yeah, we're not really in a position to say no to dollars coming in. I'm wondering if you'll share with us a little bit about any challenges that you've possibly faced serving as a rep, whether it's tied to your identity or coming in as a freshman rep, being a woman in the House.
He does that.
I think we've got a tiny objector.
Challenges. I mean, I think it's always just walking up to the Capitol and just you're like, wow, because you have orientation, but it's it's kind of like when you go to law school. It's like you go to law school, but it's nothing like practicing law, right? It's like drinking from a fire hose, or whatever that saying is. So I think just that was challenging, just in the sense of being a new representative coming in, trying to hire staff. We don't even get our office keys for our Capitol office until like 2 days before we get sworn in. We can't even hire our staff until like after swearing in. So it is very difficult at the beginning, and a little bit stressful, just because I was like, I've never had to hire a chief of staff, or I don't know what a legislative director or legislative assistant is. And so I really relied on my colleagues, relationships that I had already built, to ask those questions, like, okay, what does this person do, or how much do you pay them, things like that. And it was intimidating, especially like just defeating a longtime incumbent, and just I didn't know how people were going to react to me about that, and even just being a Latina woman or being LGBTQ, and it actually wasn't what I expected at all. It was a lot better than what I expected, because you would hear the previous session of just the craziness that happened, and it was a little bit scary, but it was nothing like that. I think probably for me the most challenging part was just trying to balance my life, right? And it's like you have two separate lives all of a sudden. And as a person who has never done it before, just, traveling back and forth, trying to make money, because it's not, being a representative, you're not going to become a millionaire. Being a state rep by any means, but it's just just balancing it all. I think, and I mean, I had a lot of fun. It was very stressful sometimes. I don't know how many of you folks followed, the activity on the floor when the notorious Chick-fil-A bill went to the floor, and the members of the five of us, the founding members of the caucus, gave these very emotional speeches on the floor. That was pretty tense. It was pretty intense, and just seeing some of our Republican colleagues sit there and they were listening, and then watching them press the button to vote for the bill anyway. I mean, things like that. I mean, it's hard, but
yeah. How do you play nice after that? Because I don't know that I could. I'll just go on record now. No, I couldn't. I'll just say that. Official, I couldn't. So like, how do you go play nice? Because it's not about you, right? That vote, that none of it's about you. It's got to be about the constituents. It's got to be about your district. Got to be about the bill, whatever the thing is. How do you do it? How do you go? You go have a drink, and then the next day everybody keeps playing nice. How do you do it?
I think that you just have to put some of those things aside, and I know that it's some people, like just like you said, that you couldn't do it, and it is very difficult, but you have to think about, right, the work that you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish. We're not going to agree on a lot of things, and some of these bigger issues that divide us, I mean, it's those issues, right, but there's a lot of other things that we can work together on. And so really, at the end of the day, it's just, we just got to get rid of those people. We got to get rid of those folks that aren't there to actually improve the lives of all Texans. They're there because they want to politicize issues that don't need to be politicized, put people's dignity, at a debate on a floor of the Texas House. And that's just not the leaders that we need, especially right now, that our state is, and our country is, going through what it's going through. We can't sit around and play games, with people's lives.
Fuera, get them out of here. Jess, how can people support your non-discrimination bill? I've got folks coming in from all over Texas and from some other states, but here in Texas, how can they help support your bill?
I mean, I think that contacting your state legislator, whoever your state rep is, especially those who live in districts that are represented by Republicans. Like I said, I mean, I think this is going to be, it is an issue that actually there's very few Republicans that are the hardcore far right, but there's a lot of folks that do that they do want to support something like this, and if they're hearing it from their constituents, because the argument always is, I got to vote my district. But if they're not hearing from their constituents that, hey, there are people in their district do support whatever issue it is, right? Whatever issue it is, then they take that into account. Same thing during session, when there are bills that are being, that we're going to vote on, people contacting, our offices, it does go a long way. I mean, we actually do take that into account, and we do listen, and you may not communicate with the representative, him or herself, but you communicate with our staff, and our staff does relate that back to us, especially if those folks live in our district, because we're there to represent the people in our district. And so I think that folks knowing that they support whatever issue it is, goes a long way, as far as what their vote is going to look like. And if they're not voting their district, then hold them accountable and vote their asses out. I mean, that's just how it is.
There we go. You hear that, allies? If you can bring your bachelorette party to our drag shows, call your state rep, tell them we want this all-inclusive non-discrimination bill, and let's get it done. All right, last question, Jessica, this one, it's a little bit personal, but I think it's really important. What is your favorite Loteria character?
That's hard. I mean, if you were to able to look around my house, I mean, I have Loteria stuff all over my house. But I mean, I guess I don't know. I have a thing for La Dama just because I have a loteria card that was painted. I commissioned somebody to paint for me. This is la licenciada, and she had like the red heels. So I like that about her because it's like, you know, she has her little suit on and she means business. But also like el valiente because it's like, you mess with me, then I'm gonna cut you, right? So I think if there were like a hybrid of both, that'd be perfect.
I think I like that. I think my hybrid might include El Valiente, but then the Sirena, because I like her outfit best. And if you're familiar with the game, you'll know
what outfit.
Yeah, that's my point. That's my point. All right, which takes me to Representative Jessica González. Thank you so much. Everybody, please, if you're in Texas, contact your state representatives. Let them know that they need to get behind and support this non-discrimination bill. It's good for Texans. It's good for business. And it's good for bachelorette parties. All right, here's my last giveaway. It's a set of not old school loteria, it's millennial loteria. And I've played, and it's hilarious. To me, the most soul-crushing one is La Student Debt. I find that very offensive, but it's in there. It's got La Feminist, El Hipster, La Border Wall. And so our recipient of the millennial loteria giveaway is, sorry, you get two. Oh, I'm picking from two? I have no, okay, all right. Eric Esqueda. Eric Esqueda. I hope you like loteria. I see Pam kind of throwing it up. Is he with Vets for the People? Eric, say hi real quick.
Hello.
Hey, Eric. All right, man, you're the big winner. So I'll put my email in there again. Send me your address and we'll get you the set in the mail. As has become my tradition. Guys, we're reaching the end of our hour here on CHISME, and so I'll be offering up my closing arguments. I'll say this, so I've got something prepared, but I was really tempted to throw it out the window after hearing Pam discuss some things, but maybe I'll save that for a future date and that'll get you guys to come back. All right, guys, but here we go. Closing arguments for the fourth installment of CHISME. It is 69 days until the election. We have to maintain focus. It is getting absolutely wacky outside. And I don't say wacky to minimize anything. I say wacky because I'm trying to abide by my employer's social media policy, and that's the only word I have left, is wacky. But we need to focus, and we need to get our shit together. We've got sex trafficking conspiracy theorists and anti-vaxxers during a global pandemic. And they're all saying, hey, look at me, look at me. No, no, do not look over there. You have to be Bullock. That's right, Sandra Bullock. No, 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 not Blindside Bullock, not the Heat Bullock, not Speed Bullock 1 or 2, absolutely not Crash Bullock, not Hope Floats Bullock, not, who else is on this list? Oh, don't think for a goddamn minute we have earned Miss Congeniality Bullock whatsoever. No, you have to be Blindside Bullock. That's right. We've got to stay focused. Don't look over there. Do not feed the trolls. Do not let the energy vampires take you out. They will suck you dry. Take that energy, go find tres familia or friends, get them to take the census, get them registered to vote, and then tell them to find tres más. That's a way better use of your energy than getting distracted. As a consummate professional procrastinator, let me tell you, we are in crunch time. This is a 69 day and night all-nighter. That is 69 days to have our voices heard, to protect our personhood. That is 69 days and nights to make sure that we are counted as a people, to say that we exist, that we deserve resources, that we demand resources, and that we're not going anywhere. And that is 69 days and nights to save our democracy. Now, I know a lot of us are disappointed by the options at the ballot. I didn't get my first or even my second choice at the top of the ticket. But my hope is that by focusing and remaining persistent, that on January 22nd of 2021, I'll be ready to hold a new administration accountable. And we can hold our leaders accountable and also give them grace. But you can only do that if we show up. And if you stay home on November 3rd, pues ya tú sabes, I'm talking shit. And that's CHISME. Thank you everybody for joining me. Thank you so much. Pam Campos-Palma, Vets for the People, State Representative Jessica González. I hope our giveaway winners enjoy their goodies. keep on the lookout. We'll be doing more Chisme soon. Buenas noches, everybody. Good night.
Buenas noches. Gracias.
Buenas noches. Gracias.
Thank you.